Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fish the Podcast, where I'm trying hard to suck less at Merfolk, and hopefully many people are learning from my mistakes. My name is Kody, and you can find me on Twitter as @NotCodySmith, and we always have my very special co-host, Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing fantastic. You can find me at MatthewCaudill8. That's where you can send all of your junk emails, your hate mail, and if you have any Russian porn bots that you'd like to have somebody follow somebody else, just send them my way.
Yeah, he's a really good catch-all for all that. It's really been convenient for me. Like, I can just send all that. Like, no, not me.
So you know how you have like the main mailbox and the junk box? I'm the junk box.
Yeah, he's also where you send all the complaints. For all compliments, you can send them to @FishcastMTG. That's where you can interact with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We don't really do a whole lot of stuff on there. Hopefully, we'll pick that up someday, eventually.
I didn't even know we had an Instagram.
Yeah,
learn something new every day.
Yeah, it's basically just me taking pictures of Merfolk adventures and whatnot. But before we go into the rest of our little intro stuff, we have a very special guest this week, don't we, Matt?
I think so.
Yeah. So we have on our show this week one of the hosts of Cumulative Upkeep, a podcast. They do a pretty general Magic podcast and talk about a lot of cool things like Commander and Limited and all that fun stuff. We have Jay on the show with us today. How's it going, Jay?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We're doing super.
Jerk. You didn't even clap.
Sorry. Yes, I'll clap. Yes. Yes. Well, because we're super stoked to have you because you have a great show.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for having me on the show. You have a great show. I love fish. Yeah.
And actually, you have a great Twitter handle. I think it's super cool.
Yeah. So you can follow me at UntapUpkeepJ.
That's pretty.
It used to be lady _Janie_J, but it was pretentious and had a lot of underscores, so I changed it to something magic related.
Yeah, well, underscores, it's kind of hard to like say that, like it slows the flow of the username. But yeah, Untap Upkeep J is very neat. It's like when they update text like they're doing in Dominaria to make things flow a little bit easier, and it just makes things look nicer and it's nice and smooth.
Well, thanks. Yeah.
You remember you can always find us wherever you listen to podcasts, on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube. We actually forgot to upload the last episode. It was just, I was terribly sick, so a lot of things slipped my mind. And remember, you can
like how I get my podcasts is Kody emails them to me. So if you'd like, Kody will personally email you the podcast.
Yes, that's definitely a feature that you can get on Patreon. Where you can find us on patreon.com/fishcastmtg. If you sign up at the $5 level, I will personally email you a copy of a fresh, off the press copy of the podcast. I didn't know that was possible, but
with the selfie.
Sure, I will send you a picture of myself. I don't know how valuable that is.
And he will be wearing a different Halloween costume every time.
You're really putting pressure on me here. You can't be doing that.
Such service.
Followers, man.
Yeah, I have one costume. It's Where's Waldo. I guess I could also do Hank Hill because all that requires is a white T-shirt. But yeah, and I would have to shave. But so that's out. That's straight out.
So it was the best. So Kody texted me last night, and he was like, "Hey, would you mind if we didn't split the Patreon cut so I can put it back into the show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. $250 is really not going to do much for me right now anyway."
Well, I'm too. Well, after Patreon takes their cut, we don't have a whole lot left over, but I'm saving up for some cool things for the show. And as much as Matt wants to buy his wife a new fridge, $250 is kind of slow going. So we could use that to better effect on the show, I think.
So I told Kody when he gets to boat money, then he has to start sharing.
Yeah. That's
just
fair.
Those awesome magic boat parties.
Yeah, or P Diddy style dance parties. I think that's what I'm more into.
Are you going to paint Merfolk on the boat?
I would have to. I mean, I think that would be the whole point. If Merfolk Patreon money gets me enough money to buy a boat, I would paint Merfolk up and down the sides. It would be amazing.
Is there one standout?
The boat's name has to be Lord of Atlantis.
Yeah, the Lord.
Absolutely. That's what I was gonna say. That has to be like the featured Merfolk on
Yeah.
there.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Maybe like two of them like strafing the sides, so that the tridents are like towards the front. I think it'd be pretty cool.
But it's got to be like 1980s heavy metal artwork where he has like over like 20 abs
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and some girl with just some ridiculously large chest sitting there like winking at him.
Yeah.
and somehow Fabio hair, like
Yeah.
Exactly.
waving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For all those old kids out there, edit that, Cody. Sorry, out there like me, who actually know what heavy metal is.
Yeah. Well, so
Sorry, trying to keep it PG. Trying to keep it
yeah,
PG.
I will definitely make sure to make you sound less you.
Thank you.
That-
Appreciate it.
All right, so we're gonna go into the random Merfolk. So I actually asked Jay to pick as our very special guest a number, and actually I wrongly put 109. It's actually between 1 and 209, and I made that error. But you did pick a pretty good one,
Yeah, 22.
number 22. So I loaded up my deck builder app, and I typed in Merfolk, and I went to number 22. And it's another one that we can pop off with. It's a common Merfolk, and I think they could have reprinted this in Amonkhet without too much of a kerfuffle. Except there aren't any Merfolk on Amonkhet. I don't think there's not a lot of water really. Maybe in the fountains or something. I don't know. But so this is there's just not a lot to say.
Just one guy just chilling in the fountain.
Yeah.
This is my fountain.
Well, there's just not a lot to say about this guy, so I'm trying to liven up the conversation. So this is Sandbar Merfolk. He costs blue for a common summon Merfolk, and he's a 1/1, and he has cycling for 2. So I mean, I don't know. There's not a whole lot to say about this guy. Unless you're playing like a cycling theme deck and you've got your Drakehaven going, and I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna completely disagree with you because I absolutely love this card. First of all, it has cycling. Drawing cards is the most fun thing to do in Magic.
It really is.
And the artwork is fantastic. It is from Urza's Saga, which is the best set ever printed. And the flavor text is absolutely amazing. You are not prey until a predator knows you exist. Come on now.
I really like how the art kind of works with the flavor text too. Like he's like kind of like coming out of, like, how like when you're at the beach and you have your feet in the sand and like you underwater and you like lift it up and it kind of billows out. Like it looks like that, like he's like, and he's got some swords and he's totally gonna get somebody.
I feel like he could very easily be the lone desert Merfolk on
Yeah.
Amonkhet.
Yeah, he could be like the fish or like the worms in Dune.
Dusul, it is time you become a sand rider and travel as a Fremen.
Like he could totally be like,
Ooh,
yeah.
Nice.
They could have done Merfolk, I
No,
think.
but in all seriousness, though, if you're playing like a Merfolk tribal deck in Commander, why wouldn't you play this?
It's true. One drop.
One drop at
Yeah.
cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you I don't know. I'm not a big fan, but apparently Matt is, so I'm sure it may find its way into Merfolk Commander at some point, but we'll see.
So
we'll see.
I'm dismantling a lot of my Commander decks, so I'm seriously considering putting a real Merfolk deck together. So stay tuned. It might actually happen.
Oh man, we might.
Tropical
It's gonna be Commander. I'm gonna spend like all of 35 cents on it, but
Green blue, right?
you what?
Green blue, right?
I haven't decided yet.
Mm.
We're still debating on the Commander. Maybe we'll talk about it in a future episode.
Oh, okay, excellent.
Okay, yeah. All right, so so this topic actually Jay came to me with, and I think it's a great topic because for all this talk of me getting into Merfolk, we haven't talked necessarily about getting into Modern as a format, and playing Merfolk where it's kind of best known. I mean, I guess you could say it's also known in Legacy, But generally, when you tell any Magic player, if you were playing Merfolk, what format would you be playing in? It's mostly Modern. And so Jay,
If you tell a legacy player you're playing Merfolk, their next response is most likely going to be, "Oh, you play that in Modern, don't you?"
yeah, well, that's the response I get when I play Legacy Merfolk.
Yeah.
And that's actually part of what we're going to talk about. But so what we're going to talk about is because, as Jay mentions on her podcast, that she's an aspiring Modern player, and she actually sent in her list, and we're going to talk about getting into Modern and playing Merfolk. So I think it's a great topic. It's really cool it's a we'll get into it. So one of the things is we're going to ask Jay questions, and she has questions for us too. But we're also going to chime in with different things about Modern in general, and more specifically playing Fish in Modern. So,
And I don't want to disappoint our fans. I promise you guys, I am not prepared at all. So these questions, the answers are going to be straight from the heart.
well, that's isn't that how you always talk, straight from the heart? That's what Disney told me. I should follow my heart, listen to my heart.
Isn't it like straight to the heart and you're to blame? You give Merfolk a bad name?
Oh,
Oh,
I
that just happened.
That
just
sounds
happened.
about right. That sounds about right.
nobody on this podcast should be giving Merfolk a bad name. That isn't hopefully never going to be the case. So, Jay, as a aspiring Modern player, what's getting you into playing Modern?
So my journey started with like kitchen table magic and then went to Commander. And then I decided that I wanted to do something a little more competitive, but still being, a constructed format. And then I was like, I don't want to play standard because it rotates and I like cards to stay my cards. And so I wanted to play modern. And the biggest suggestion I got for getting into modern is build burn because it's cheap
Mhm.
but I don't like red. So I went to Merfolk. I was immediately drawn to Merfolk.
Yeah, and honestly, that's kind of one of the points that we're going to get to is honestly, compared to a lot of decks in Modern, Merfolk is a relatively cheap deck. So we'll get into the other points you made in just a second, but when you talk about like standard versus Modern, you're right. The cards last a long time,
Yeah.
and I mean
Unless you
that's
like playing twin.
yeah.
Oh.
Well, yeah, that's another point we'll get to as well. But I mean, I know Matt as well as I pretty much exclusively play Eternal formats. We play
Yeah.
Commander, Legacy, Modern. We'll play Draft every once in a while, but we're more interested in something that like if I'm going to invest my money in this, I want it to last for a while.
Yeah, especially for the old fogies like us who have kids and whatnot. It's too hard to get out on a regular basis for me to play standard. So if I put a standard deck together and I spend X amount of dollars on it, I'm gonna get to play it once or twice. Whereas I can have my modern deck put together or my legacy deck or whatever, and I can play once a month, once every 2 months, and not feel like I'm gonna be killed financially for it.
Yeah, that's definitely and I'm going to bring this up again when we talk about Jay's deck list. But there are a lot of subtle changes in the life of a modern deck, right? So things might slowly change in favor of a certain card, or they might slowly change in favor of something else. But honestly, you're not train wrecked if you keep your deck the same. So one of the other cool things about modern is that it has a pretty large card pool, and we already discussed that it's not rotating. But what it does lead to is it leads to established decks, so you kind of know what you're playing against pretty often. But it is kind of open to brewing. So like we've said, like when we talk about new cards for Merfolk, or old cards that we can bring in, it's a deck that we can kind of play with a little bit, right?
Right. I guess that's one of the things that really intimidates me is like going up against. So I've played modern once, and I went up against Death Shadow some sort of like Titan Shift deck and then Infect. And so like I was super intimidated by, like going up against Death Shadow. I was like, this is the Death Shadow. I don't know, like I've watched some and I've heard about it, but it's just like this is so intimidating. Can my little fish actually beat Death Shadow?
Well, and that's the cool thing about Modern, and I think you probably have a better idea about it, being on a podcast and following Magic a little more closely than probably the lay person who's just getting into the format. But actually knowing the meta is like half the battle. Like I remember one of my first tournaments, I was playing Bogles against Bogles, and it's just I didn't know my. I'm like, ooh, what's he doing now? What's he doing now? What's this? What's this? And of course, I lost. But it, once you finally learn the meta, that's half the battle. And then you just have to worry about the brewers that come in with just some of the weirdest stuff, and you just kind of gotta throw it to the wind and be like, okay, and just
Once
have fun with it.
and so before we go very much further, what I'd like to do is I have Jay's deck list pulled up here. So we can kind of look at it and see, there's a lot of good stuff in this deck, I think. And we can kind of talk about,
Cody's not biased at all.
I'm not biased towards Merfolk decks generally. But so like what we can do is we can, because what you have isn't like what you would see if you were watching somebody stream. They have like a super tight optimized list, and they've been playing Merfolk for years and years, and but what I think you have here is actually a deck that has enough of the mainframe of a Merfolk deck, and we can kind of talk about the strengths and weaknesses of a Merfolk deck once we look at your list. But you have the good parts and you have the core of the deck, and so like what I think you have here is the slight changes that you don't have exactly four of everything, but that's kind of how those adjustments are made in Modern. You don't change out whole chunks of the deck, you make slight adjustments. So we'll go over the creatures first. So there's 4 Curse Catchers, 2 Kosi's Trickster, which costs a blue and is a 1/1 that whenever an opponent shuffles his or her library, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Kosi's Trickster. Which, in this format, especially right now with lots of greedy mana bases, people are fetching and shuffling, so that seems like a pretty good, interesting...
That is super spicy. I really like that.
That card?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not seen that in a Merfolk list, and I think that's a really cool idea.
I was actually going to comment that I do like that as well. I think it's definitely not something that if you played Island Aether Vial, and then they go in, oh, you're playing Merfolk, and then you untap, put your Aether Vial to 1, and you play Kosi's Trickster and leave up your Vial. Like people would be like, what's going on here? So it would keep people on their toes. There's 2 Harbinger of the Tides, 2 Kopala Warden of Waves. You have your full playsets of Lord of Atlantis and Master of the Pearl Trident, which I think is really important in any Merfolk deck. 2 Master of Waves.
Not doing it wrong.
What's that?
I said she's not doing it wrong so far.
Yeah. 2 Mara Regery and 4 Silver Gold Depths. You have a couple instants here. 2 Dismember, which I like running 2 Dismember. It's really good with it handles a lot of stuff. And 2 Echoing Truth, which actually a lot of people do run main boards, so not against Echoing Truth in any sense. We have 4 Spreading Seas, 4 Aether Vial, and 2 Smuggler's Copter. And you have a pretty good land base here too: 15 islands, 4 Mutavaults, 1 Cavern of Souls. So honestly, Matt, you've played a lot of Modern in your day, and I've been catching up a little bit. What do you think about this? Is this something that you would take to FNM?
No, because I don't play Merfolk.
Fair.
But no. In all seriousness, no. It sounds really fun. And that's kind of the cool thing about playing a little bit of a Brewers version of a deck like that, is it can throw people off, because when I go against somebody who's playing Merfolk, I know what I'm expecting. But when somebody drops a Kosie's Trickster on me and I have to turn the card around and actually read it, it's like, okay, what the heck are they going to throw at me? And it makes me play differently. So no, I really like that kind of stuff. Now I do have a question. Were the edits you've made to the traditional stock list, were they conscious because you wanted to try something different, or were they just card selection
Uh,
based,
so it's
or little a
it
little b?
it was a little of a little b.
Okay.
I I've been building this deck for months because
Mhm.
it's, Aether Vial is not a cheap card, and
No.
so I just would piece it together. And so it kind of came together as like, oh, like I kind of got impatient at the end. So I was like, I don't have Phantasmal Image right now, so
Mhm.
I'm just gonna throw in some Cozy's Tricksters instead, or something to that effect, something fun. And so I kind of looked at a bunch of Merfolk, like Merfolk Sovereign is another lord that I could have put in there, but I wanted to do something like Cozy's Trickster instead, especially because I was watching a lot of Death Shadow, and I was like, I could maybe benefit from that.
No, I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad you said that because that kind of brings the point that I was trying to make, and that's just for anybody getting into modern is
Right.
don't think you have to use the stock list to be able to play. Like any of those jerks who say if you're doing this, you're doing it wrong. Don't play, blah blah. Ignore them because I'll tell you right now. When Ulamog or Nulamog was came out, I only had one copy, and the Tron decks always ran two. So I put Emrakul the Protestant in there because I just had a copy. I need another big Eldrazi to throw in there. Guess what started happening? A lot of people started dropping their second Nulamog and playing Emrakul. So I mean, I was Emrakuling before it was cool. Is essentially what I'm saying.
So
But
Jay, you might be Kosie's trickstering before it was cool.
exactly.
Hey.
And how
But
cool
but
is that? Sounds cooler to say too. Better than Emmer cooling.
I don't know. I don't know, man.
All right.
but
So
again, I mean, at the end of the day, modern is a competitive format, and your deck list sounds competitive the way it is. You're gonna line up against somebody, and you're not gonna get steamrolled. And guess what? It's still a game. Have fun.
yeah, and you did mention that cards like Cavernous Souls and Aether Vial are still not cheap. I mean they've both had relatively recent reprints, but that still didn't move the needle a whole lot, unfortunately. Um, but overall, when you're like you said in the beginning, when you're putting that money into the deck, that deck is going to last you, you know, forever and ever, barring a banning, which I don't think there really is for Merfolk.
Hey, Cody, since I'm a bad co-host, can I jump the gun a little bit? Can we talk a little bit about finance? Because one
Sure.
thing I do want to mention is Cavern of Souls is not necessarily a deal breaker in this deck. In modern, there's not much countering going on. And if you're playing a mono blue version, who really cares? So I mean that's an easy just kind of knock out that, play four islands. Island is the best card ever printed anyway. So just go for it.
So, then would you guys suggest like not necessarily waiting for modern players for them to have like an optimized list before they go to a modern event?
No, play.
Yeah,
Play.
I would say play,
I don't,
especially.
I don't, I don't care if you're running in there with a standard deck. Just play because you need to learn the meta. You learn more from your losses than you do from your wins.
So going up and getting steamrolled by Titan Shift is a lot better, even if you just, lose in 2 games. That's gonna be a
Absolutely,
lot better. Okay.
because at the end of the day, you'll know what Titan Shift is doing, and you'll go back and think, okay, how would I have not lost?
Okay.
The biggest thing is to learn what your meta is doing, because that's kind of where you want to shape your deck. I mean, I don't know if do you have aspirations to play, competitively?
We'll see.
Okay.
The first time I did it was so much fun,
Yeah.
and I had a decent amount of success, more success than I thought it was going to have, and so I think it's definitely right up my alley.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, if you're going to be going like to GPs and Pro Tours, that's where you kind of have to focus more on having that super hyper optimized list. But if
Okay.
you're at the FNM level and you're just starting out, don't worry about it. I mean, we even have unclaimed territory. If you really want that tribal land, but at FNM, it's not a deal breaker to not have more than one cavern like you have.
Okay.
Well, and more often than not, these aren't professionals you're playing against. They're Friday Night Magic players. More often than not, the guy lining up across from you doesn't have the optimized list either. They're going to be missing something because Magic is really expensive. I have a pretty decent job and a pretty good budget. I my Legacy Eldrazi deck isn't playing the Cavern of Souls because I don't want to spend $300+ on them because
Oh
my
wow.
wife would
Yeah.
divorce me if she caught me.
If she caught you, that's the important part.
That is the
Exactly.
important part.
You got to be very sneaky.
And so we're going to go into your next question that you have in our notes here, which was sideboarding in an unknown meta.
Right.
So
Um,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to go into, part of it would just be playing in your meta to know what you should put into your sideboard. In here, you have 4 relics, which are really good in this in modern as a whole. I mean, Snapcasters, uh, Storm. Those are all decks that use the.
Well, the big one that you're missing right now is the Hollow One deck. Is very popular, and that's another deck that's not very expensive.
Yeah, Hollow One is definitely up there
Mhm.
as kind of a budget deck, and so having that relic is definitely a way you can just kind of go and just kind of hose them a little bit.
So real quick, the most fun thing to do in the world, and I hope you get to experience this once, is play a relic on one. They go up against the living end player because you don't even have to crack it. They literally cannot win because they'll cycle stuff like, I'll exile that. The next turn, exile that, and then you can just kind of like screw around with them and like just make them play really long time, and they just can't do anything. It's so much fun.
That sounds amazing.
It's like troll level 10,
So
troll level Golgari Grave.
yeah, it's definitely it's a
That was like
great
the worst joke
card.
I ever made. I apologize to everyone who had to hear that.
That's why I was kind of hoping to just go past it and not have to worry about it. But
I
so
need a time out that one.
so the next card you have in your sideboard is Seize Claim, which honestly a lot of people are bringing in as a result of these very greedy mana bases currently. It's like let them shock into an open fetch and bolt you, fine, and then you just Seize Claim, and I think you even get to draw a card. Oh no, you don't draw a card off
No.
this one, but you still cut off their mana. Even against blue decks like or Grixis or blue control decks, these are great because you can hit their Celestial Colonnades, you can hit their Creeping Tar Pits, which are their finishers. And I mean, they can snap bolt all they want, but I mean, that doesn't always end games. They need their big lands to really finish things up.
Humans is another one that's funny when you seize claim it because they only play 19 lands and they're all. I don't think they run any basics in their decks. At least last I saw.
So there's also Vapor Snag, which is also it's been kind of in and out of Merfolk lists for a long time, but it's great tempo. It's like they play their they've got a 10/10 Death Shadow and they swing at you. That's neat. Bye. You start humming NSYNC and you're just like get out of here. And
One of my worst losses against Merfolk was to Vapor Snag. I lose all the time to Merfolk playing Tron, and I had a Worm Coil out, and I'm like, I won, I finally won, and then I swing to gain life, and just Vapor Snag. I'm like, I'm dead on the board.
darn.
This hurts.
Womp womp.
And then the last card that I have that you have in your list here, Jay, that I haven't seen a lot of modern play with this card, but I don't see why not, honestly. I actually run it in my legacy sideboard list for Merfolk, and it's Sorcerer's Spyglass. I mean, in blue, we have lots of ways to look at hands, but I mean, this is basically like see what's coming and turn off the worst thing. So I think this is a
Right.
great include.
Can I
Awesome.
ask you a question? Why did you include it in your sideboard? Was there a certain deck you were looking to play it against, or?
Uh, so this is kind of like an unknown, like I don't know necessarily what um if I come up against a planeswalker or Liliana that I don't really know what else to do with because I am uncertain of Merfolk as of yet because I'm so new. I was just like maybe just like turn it off.
Yeah,
Maybe just do that.
That does seem
And
like
so
a good
that's
use of
I,
it.
I love the
right.
cards.
Yeah.
I,
So it's
and
kind of like an uneasy, like, this seems like it would come in handy.
No, definitely. I like I said, I really like the card, and I even play it in Legacy, so I don't see why you wouldn't. Like it like you said, it gives you information, and you can turn
Right.
off their worst threat. So at
Right.
worst, you turn off the most horrible thing in their deck, and that's helpful.
and
Um,
you're violating everything anyway, so just your mana's there for playing Sorcerer Spyglass.
Right.
yeah. So you kind of ended in the notes with this as your final question. What else should I come with when I don't really know the shop and/or the players there? I mean, I think your deck is pretty good as it is. It's got basically what we like in a Merfolk deck. And actually, one of the things that I put down was consistency. Merfolk is
Mhm.
a very consistent deck because it has many redundant pieces. So, Lords, great. Silvergill helps us draw. Seize Claim and those types of effects. We want a redundant deck because we want to do what we want to do. We want to push the plan. So I think honestly your deck is pretty good. What do you think, Matt?
I like it a lot. It has pizzazz. That's going to be my word for it. One, because pizzazz is a super fun word to say, and I want every use to say it. But I mean, it's got the core, the Merfolk deck that you need, but it also has a bunch of like just fun stuff that the person's going to look at you. They're going to look at the card. They're going to look at you again. They're going to turn the card around, and read it. You'll experience this in Modern, especially when you play stuff that they don't normally see, and then just be like, okay, and then lose to it. This is fantastic.
Well, that warms my heart.
So
Um,
sorry, go ahead, Jay.
do you have any suggestions, like maybe sideboarding Echoing Truth in favor of, I don't I'm vapor slag. I don't know. Any
So
suggestions that way?
for sideboarding, one thing I will say, and one thing a lot of people make mistakes of, is when they build their decks and their sideboards, they look at like MTG top eight, or Star City Games top deck lists and things like that, and they go with pro sideboards. The problem
Oh,
is
okay.
your meta is not going to be a pro meta.
Right.
One, because of cost. One, because I mean some of those pro decks are just better in the hands of people who play all the time. And if you're just going to slam it together, you're going to lose because it's a complicated deck to play.
Right.
So I would keep the sideboard you have right now because I think you have a plan with it, and
Okay.
then just evolve with it as you learn your meta more. So let's say you go there and you play Affinity 3 times a night. Well, then maybe you want to play her close recalls in there
Okay.
to help yourself out.
Yeah.
Um, or maybe you play a ton of burn. So maybe you want to spend the money and get Chalice of the Void, so you can Chalice on one. Things like that. So you got to learn what you are expecting to see.
Okay.
And to echo what Matt said, your sideboard is pretty good against an open meta, against an unknown, And I mean, how many modern players would you say they have at your shop?
There were about 20.
That's a pretty good showing. That's a pretty good.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of one of those things that you'll have to go a few times before you kind of see what's all going on, and you can kind of adjust. And I mean,
Okay.
we're mono blue, so we have lots of options.
Right.
So you got it. You picked a great deck. Honestly, I'm a little. It's a proud moment when you see someone pick up Merfolk
And you had nothing to do with it.
and yeah.
It's a very beloved deck. I mean, it has a podcast
Yeah.
dedicated to it.
Well, that's what we're here
50%
for.
of the hosts to actually play the deck.
Right.
So what I did was let's see here. I went into Twitter, and as well as there's also a couple things that I would point you to for some kind of sideboard guides. There's a whole Merfolk Discord that there's some pretty good streamers on there, and they discuss what they take out and why in that Discord. So that's a good resource, and I know that Nikachu and Merfolk Joe also both do really extensive sideboard guides on YouTube. So those are guys that really know what they're doing.
Isn't there a Reddit page that has MTG Fishcast as part of it?
Yeah, yeah, that was another thing I was going to suggest was Reddit's official Merfolk subreddit as rfishmtg. So that's another good resource to expand your knowledge. But what I did was in the notes.
Or the best resource you could possibly have is tweet at Kody, not Kody Smith, or at Matthew Caudill 8, and just ask us a question because we got nothing else going on, so we'll reply.
um, and I asked a few people on Twitter and on the subreddit, what got them into Merfolk, and one of the users on the Discord, TuxDev, is a really big Legacy streamer. He streams Legacy a lot. He said he already played Legacy Fish, so Modern Fish is kind of in quotes free to play because I actually even put in here the difference between my Modern and Legacy builds. I have 10 cards in the main board that are different and 10 cards in the sideboard. So it's an easy transition to a Legacy deck if you ever want to play Legacy in the future.
The problem is you're going to want to. Modern is a gateway format.
That's what I hear. Oh, crap.
What did you get yourself into, Jay?
Oh, no.
You get to the Modern events and you think it's just going to be all fun and games. And you got those dark, shady characters in the corner. You want to play some Legacy?
You want a force of will?
we don't pay mana for our cards.
Yeah, excellent points. There is a lot of carryover between the decks in Modern and Legacy. So, Jay, I mean, if so, at some point in the deep dark future you wanna play Legacy, that's a route you could go. Rothgar13 said, "I love Blue Devotion in Standard, and Merfolk is Blue Devotion port to Modern." So, I mean, there you go. On Twitter, I had a lot of similar responses. A lot of people saying that they played a lot, like you, Jay. They played a lot of kitchen table Magic, and either got into it with like the recent Merfolk versus Goblins dual deck, or just like tribal stuff, and so they picked up Modern as kind of like the competitive tribal deck.
Which, by the way, I don't want to give Wizards too much credit because they've screwed up a lot lately. But the Merfolk versus Goblins deck was actually really cool. If you want to just open a box and play, some of those dual decks are a lot of fun.
I agree.
Agreed.
Yeah, and so Jay, when you were building your Modern deck, did you kind of just start kind of messing around with it as a kitchen table deck, or because you said you kind of were picking up the pieces as you went? Did you proxy cards?
I did. So my friends and I had a proxy day where we proxied 8-Rack, Merfolk, Titan Shift, and I can't remember what the other one was. And so then we just played a bunch, and then I played all of them, and I knew Merfolk was like definitely the road I wanted to go down. And so then it took me a couple of months to get it together. And then once I kind of got it completely together, I made my partner play against me with some like crappy kitchen table Knights deck and just stomped his face in a bunch of times, and then was properly humbled when I actually went to Modern.
The greatest thing about somebody who's first getting into Modern playing Merfolk, and this is just kind of the nuts and bolts, vanilla ice cream of it all.
Yeah.
It does two of the greatest things that you can do in Magic. It draws cards and it turns creatures sideways. What else do you need?
Right. And like you said, it's fun tribal. And that's just appealing.
And Matt will know this. I actually had a tribal cube for some time and had allies. I've had allies tribal. I've had snake tribal commander. I love playing tribal in pretty much any form that I can. And Merfolk is basically the king, the longest reigning. Maybe a prince now, but of Modern decks. And a lot of people said that had similar experiences where I played with my friends like you did. We just kind of messed around, and I found Merfolk to be kind of the most consistent or the most fun to play. So I definitely like how you found it, where it was just kind of like, oh yeah, let's put these decks together and try them out, and then here you are on a Merfolk podcast talking about it.
Hey, it's great to do that, just to get some friends together in proxy. Yeah.
And so I actually have, before we wrap this up, I have one, the best comment that I got, both the best comment and the best username, was at and
Matthew
my
Lilly.
what?
It was my comment, right?
No, it wasn't your comment. My wife and I went back and forth on how to say this. I think it's Tangle Stanks, but my wife thinks it's Tangles Tanks. I like Tangle Stinks better.
Okay.
And
Whoever's Twitter this is, can you please let us know how to pronounce your Twitter handle? Because I am super curious now.
Me
I
too. It is Twitter though, so I'm gonna assume it stinks.
I really like, in my heart of hearts, I hope it's Tangle Stanks, because I think it's just like, that's such a jumble of adjectives and verbs, and I don't know. But his comment was, "They're rippling fishy bodies," which
Ooh.
his or her, his picture is actually a picture of Jesus holding a Tyrannosaurus. So this is the best Twitter account I think I've ever come across. But so, you know, a lot of Merfolk are actually
Just
pretty
like one of those
ripped.
personal account that he goes on to, so people don't know it's him.
Yeah. I just think it's beautiful. It's all beautiful. So yes, at Tangle Stanks, let us know what the deal is with your account, because you're an amazing person, I think. And
If you let us know how to pronounce your name correctly, Kody will alter a crappy common Merfolk for you and send it to you.
I'll alter a jade bearer for you.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I mean, we talked a lot about getting into Merfolk. You know, general pros. I mean, what are the kind of, Matt? I think you could come up with a con or two.
Con is that it's never going to be a tier 1 deck. It just is what it is. So it's kind of, we've talked about this at length. It's a solid B minus. You're gonna be competitive. You're gonna go out there and have fun. But if you expect to go out there and win GPs, you're not piloting this. Now again, I know Nikachu and a few others would start throwing stones at me, but in reality that's true. Also, the sideboard, mono blue sideboard isn't super strong. It's very limited. So you really need to get game 1.
Yeah. Well, a patron saint of this channel, Nikachu, would probably definitely disagree with you. But if you
that's why I'm the unbiased opinion.
yeah, no, that's another reason why I have you on, is you're both old, and you can tell me why I'm wrong when I'm just like, oh, Merfolk. You're like, no, see, this is why you can't just keep talking about Merfolk like this.
It's the perfect combination.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's equal parts sassiness and get off my lawn that led me to you.
I one day just want to be like the old Muppets that always make fun of people. You know, the two old guys? That's what I want to be
yeah.
one day.
Oh man, those are the best Muppets, I think.
Old and sassy.
Waldorf, yeah, Waldorf and Statler, I think.
Oh
I
yeah, I think
so,
you're
yeah.
right. I was gonna quickly look them up, but Jay came to the rescue with having their names just off the top of her head. That was amazing.
But I don't want
There
to
it
partner.
is.
I just want to be an amalgam of both of them.
Oh gosh, so like one of those meld creatures from Innistrad.
Exactly.
Ooh,
Exactly.
ooh, I don't know if I want to see that. Jay, you've been a great guest. It was a great pleasure to have you on. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at untapupkeepj. That's me. And you can also find me on YouTube. I'm at the Booster Tutor channel. I'm part of the podcast, and I have a small little segment called the Card Discovery Corner.
Oh man, that sounds really
Yeah.
cool.
Can you
It's
tell us a
neat.
little bit about that real quick?
Yeah, so
Plug yourself?
I basically just look through Magic's history, and I'm like, oh, that's a cool card. Let's just look at the cycle that Teleria is from, for example. Go into that and look at Pendlehaven, and then look at all of them. So it's just a lot of fun. And then we look at like what the internet has to say and the sassy comments that they make, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you've ever looked up like an Amazon review, like there's some people just have weird things to say about like weird little cards like that. And I mean, Commander's just a gold mine for cards like that. So, and I know you've spoken at great length on your show about loving Commander. So I'm
Yeah.
sure you find gems all the time on your little card discovery corner there.
like tempting worm.
Ooh.
Yes, go look it up. It's great.
Well, go look
I got one for
for
you.
go
I got
look for
one
the
for you
show,
that
and you can find
that
out about
Corbin didn't
Tempting Worm.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
Corbin didn't know about this one. Rashad Pawn Shop. That's a fun one.
I don't believe you. I don't believe that's actually a real card.
Oh, go on your stride.
Go look- Okay. Okay.
So
Excellent.
so
And real quick, I'm gonna throw my weight around here and bypass Kody with his permission. Can we have you on here in a month or 2 or 3 months or so you can kind of give us an update of where you're at with your modern deck and how your tournaments have been going and so far so forth?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's do it
sweet,
again.
sweet.
Yeah, and I wanted to thank you guys so much. This has been such a blast, and I thank you so much for your help.
And one thing we do need to do too
Yes.
is that once you get your skill set up with the deck, we need to have you and Kody best out of 5 mirror match.
Oh,
Excellent.
yes. It'll be the showdown of the
And we'll have to do like a
YouTubes.
fun bet. Like if you win, Kody has to wear a tutu on the show. And if Kody wins, Kody has to wear a banana suit on the show.
Sure.
Perfect.
I'm gonna place my bets now on Jay.
My wife wants Jay to win.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you.
I appreciate it. You're so supportive. All right. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as @FishcastMTG. Personally on Twitter, I am not Kody Smith. And Matt, you are Matthew Cadillo.
Cadillo 8.
We established that last a couple weeks ago. And again, find Jay on YouTube, on her podcast, Cumulative Upkeep, which is a great podcast. I've listened to back episodes because honestly, like, I was like, oh wait, there's a podcast, and like I was like, sweet, and so I just started listening to back episodes on my drive to work. Remember, you can find us on Patreon as Fishcast MTG on Patreon. Your support, as little as $1 a show, helps out a lot. Like I said, we're trying to make little improvements here and there to kind of help the production values and all that fun stuff. And yeah, find us wherever you listen to podcasts, and rate us, review us, do all that fun stuff.
And
on
remember,
Apple.
if you become a Patreon, you don't even have to use a podcast anymore. Cody will just email it to you.
Yeah, I'll just email you an MP3, and you can import that into GarageBand and just cut it up and make us say anything. It's amazing. You could ruin our show, literally just ruin us. I think that would probably be a fitting end. Really, we could just end it.
$1, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as you can't access the feed that goes out to Apple, then we're good. So thank you very much. And actually, before we go, I have one question for you, Jay.
Okay.
So does the J stand for J, like Jay, like Homer J. Simpson's middle name stands for J?
It doesn't, but I really wish it did.
Oh man, because I like when I saw that, I was like, it's just J. It's so mysterious. Like, what could it be? It's like it would be like the Occam's razor, that like the simplest answer is what's in front of me.
Just J.
It's just J.
One thing I tell Cody all the time: just lie. Yes,
Right.
exactly what it is.
You know, though, bringing things full circle, I very well could be a Russian porn bot, because they also have names that are mysterious, like Jay. Just saying. I mean,
They generally have more numbers and
You have been
letters.
following me even before we had the show, so.
Yep, there you go. I think all the wickets are starting to line up. We can put it on our basement push pin board and draw lines to all sorts of things on the show. But thank you again for being on the show, Jay, and we will see everybody out there next week.
Good night, everyone.
night. Can I also just thank you guys for explaining what Obero did? That one land, the one that taps to return itself to your hand.
Yeah, I kind of messed that one up a little bit.